Hello, everybody. My name is Kira Metcalf. I'm a safety engineer with Mortenson Construction.
Yeah, I'm Mitch Transtrom. I'm a senior safety director. I was just talking to Matt over here. I actually graduated from the Rocky Mountain Center 14 years ago. So the program looks like much different than it did back then. It was a good time. So actually, after I graduated, I went into the mining industry and spent 7 years in the mining industry with BHP Billiton, which is one of the largest mining companies in the world, which is cool. Got to travel a bunch, see a bunch of cool stuff. I was an industrial hygienist for them. And then I went to the dark side and started my career in safety 7 years ago with Mortenson. So yeah, it's been a journey, learned a ton, and I'm really grateful that we have the opportunity to come and sit through the journal club with you all. There's a lot of things that we've talked about in there that we're going to kind of tie into our vision of what worker safety is really all about.
A little bit of background about myself too. So I graduated from the University of Utah with my master's in health promotion and education about 10 years ago. And so my background is all in corporate wellness. That's what my thesis and everything was on. Worksite wellness. I did my thesis, implemented a study at a financial planning company in California, and evaluated all of that. And so the last 10 or so years, I've been working in corporate wellness. I've been out at Meta and Eagle Mountain running the wellness program for them. And Mortenson Construction is the one that's building Meta's data center out there. And about 1.5 years ago, they poached me like, hey, can you come join us and we'll start a wellness program within Mortenson, but we want you to kind of go the route of safety engineer, learn the ins and outs of construction, but let's tie in wellness and really get this started within our company. It's been an incredible opportunity that we'll talk about here in a little bit, how all of this can work together and how wellness is up and coming in construction. Just really cool pathway that's being paved. So a little bit of background about Mortenson. It is a family-owned firm. Last year, we celebrated 70 years being in business, which I can attest to. A family-owned company, but it's also just so family-oriented. I'm a single mom of 2 little kids, and the support that I've received from this company is unmatched. I have never experienced anything like this in my entire career. It's been incredible. We have 12 regional offices. We just opened a Salt Lake location within the last few years, which Mitch oversees, even being from Phoenix. So we're still definitely growing that business here. We are in the top 30 builders in the US, number 27 as of last year. And number 34 in Best Workplace Awards in the last 5 years. We have over 8,000 team members, and that is composed of, if you want to view like white collar versus blue collar. So we would be viewed as more of like technically white collar. So the superintendents, project managers, directors, things like that, but that's also composed of craft team members as well. So we are in the business of managing people as being a general contractor, but we also have a huge population of team members that are actually out there doing the work, the carpenters and things like that. And then $6.9 million in annual revenue. So just some of our stats here over the last few years.
Yeah, so some of the markets that we serve as a general construction company, we're actually the number 2 wind builder in the nation. So we're really into renewable energies. There's a lot of tax rebates and things like that for companies to implement all this stuff. And so we're definitely taking advantage of that. We have so many companies coming to us saying we need renewable energies that we don't have the capacity to build all of those projects. That's how much is around the country. We're the number 3 solar builder in the country. We do power generation, transmission, and distribution plants. We also do data centers like Kira talked about. So in 2018 is when we started our data center business, and our customers are Meta or Facebook. She mentioned Eagle Mountain, Utah, which is just down the road, $3 billion campus there. So huge infrastructures. We just started one in Louisiana, $10 billion venture just for housing pictures from Facebook, which is crazy, right? Telecommunications, manufacturing, sports. So we're really the number 2 sports builder in the nation. So something that's popular is the Raiders Stadium in Las Vegas. We build that. We build stadiums all over the country. hotels, convention centers, commercial offices, healthcare, you name it, right? We do it. We don't do residential stuff. We do everything outside of that. So we're really grateful for the opportunity to come in and talk to you today. I wanted to talk just a little bit about our journey. Does anybody know when OSHA was established?
1970 something.
Yeah, I like that. That's always my answer. It's 1971, right? So like when you think about the grand scheme of things, like it wasn't that long ago, but yet so much has changed since the 70s, right? And you think about OSHA regulations and how antiquated they are. Well, we've been in business for 70 years. So this was before OSHA came out, and we worked just like everybody else to come into compliance with worker health and safety. In 1995, this is kind of the year that we established what we call our zero injury program. In 95, it's a family-owned company. So Mortenson himself said, look, we gotta stop hurting people. Like we're not just gonna do the bare minimum anymore. And he stood in front of the whole organization and he said, we're gonna do something different. We're not gonna take on projects that have low margins, right? We need plenty of buffer from a financial standpoint to make sure our team members can do the right thing. We're not gonna take on projects that have accelerated schedules because that puts people in a bad spot and they're gonna rush and take shortcuts and they end up getting hurt, right? So this, I know you guys are used to looking at this. The RIR is these yellow data points, and then near misses and HAZRECs are basically like how we learn from work. And so you'll see our trend. So in 95, we had an RIR of like 6.5. Does anybody know how recordable incident rate is measured or calculated? No? Yes? Okay, I'll tell you. You basically take the number of injuries, recordable injuries that needed to be recorded by OSHA, and you multiply that times 200,000, which gives you a standard, kind of like Avogadro's number, right? Gives you this standard. And then you divide it by the number of actual work hours that you have. And the reason why you do that is that way you can measure small companies against large companies in its even data set. So we were basically hurting 6.5 people out of every 100 workers. That's a lot. It's a lot of people. They got hurt bad enough where they couldn't come to work the next day. And so Mortenson just basically said, look, we're done with this. We're going to do better. So we started our journey. We started doing those things that I mentioned. And just like any journey, it's kind of a rocky road, but you'll see that we're down here now, which is absolutely amazing. Last year, we had our greatest year that we've ever had with 8,000 team members. We had an RIR of 0.5, which is absolutely fantastic. Did anybody know the national average incident rate?
In construction?
In construction?
6?
It's actually quite low.
Three?
It's 2.3 right now. Nice. A couple of years ago, it was like 3.5, right? We're getting better and better as an industry. But 0.5 is absolutely amazing. I'm not saying that yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, is that injury rate only Mortenson employees or does it include any subcontractors?
Really good question. Only Mortenson employees. We do as an organization track holistically as well our subcontractors because anybody that comes to our job site is treated the same exact way. But yeah, that's just Mortenson members. Really good. So you'll see the data, right? The more that we report near misses and hazards that we recognize, the more that we can learn from the situation. We know learning helps us not change people, but change the circumstances in which people work in and allows us to do better for them. So what our zero injury program really consists of is leadership engagement, craft engagement, planning, and accountability. I always tell the people that I work with, our job is threefold. One, is set really clear expectations. Two, which is the biggest one, like we need to spend 80% of our time doing this, is removing barriers for people to be successful. And then three, holding them accountable for that, right? And we're going to talk just a little bit more about that here in a second. So safety and productivity don't have to be at odds. The journal studies that we reviewed today had a lot of how do we change people instead of changing the circumstances, right? I made a comment about regulations pointing at the wrong thing. I think the old view of safety is really that the systems in which people work in are intrinsically safe. What do we think about that? They're definitely not. When you think about construction, there are people working at heights, working with massive equipment, getting into these confined spaces, right? It is not intrinsically safe. But yet the psyche really, in this old view of safety is like, well, it's up to people to make choices. Like, man, we put them in a bad spot. And we actually pay people a lot of money to adapt to their circumstances. And how often do we pull them back in and say, that adaptation was good and this one was bad? There's none of that, right? So what can we do to change their environment, help them make better choices? I wanted to talk a little bit about human and organizational performance. Has anybody heard of this before? HOP principles? That has? All right, cool. So this leads us to our new thinking of safety, the new way that we think about safety. There's a ton of authors out there about HOP principles, but this is something that Mortenson gravitates towards and what we try to do on a regular basis. So systems are not inherently safe. We have competing priorities all the time, right? We have schedules, we have financials, we have all kinds of stuff. And yet at the same time, we go, oh yeah, also be safe, right? How do we build that and bake that into everything that we do? I was actually watching some concrete guys erect some walls. They have their concrete bags on, their tool bags. They have fall protection. They have these new helmets. They have their vests. They have their gloves. They have their boots. And then they have all these really heavy tools. And I'm just thinking, this is somebody that's hanging off of a wall safely, you know, with they're being tied off. And they're swinging this 40-pound hammer trying to drive in this thing. And this dude's got a smile on his face. And I'm like, this is amazing. We ask them to do such hard things and they're happy to do it because we're looking out for them. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about what human organizational performance is. So HOP is defined, HOP is an organizational framework used to understand and enhance how employees work in high-risk environments. When I first heard about this, I thought a little bit about ergonomics, right? Instead of trying to fit the worker to the work environment, we're trying to change the work environment to fit the people. That's exactly what HOP principles are. So our goal is to improve work conditions by recognizing that human error are inevitable and using them as opportunities for growth and improvement. Who has a cell phone? Everybody does, right? How much does that thing cost? Like $1,000, right? Who's dropped it? Is it because you're a moron?
Yes.
No, no. It's because we make mistakes, right? So what do we do to guard against those mistakes?
Put a case on it.
Put a case, put a screen protector, right? We add these layers of defense to guard against human error. So why would we not do that in the industry? Why would we just say, hey, we know it's harsh out there, good luck. And then when you make a mistake, we fire you real fast? That's terrible, right? That's not what Mortenson does. We engage in investing in a case and a screen protector for people. So there's 5 principles of human performance, just like as an introduction here. Number 1, error is normal. People make mistakes. And if we build our systems knowing that error is normal, then we're going to do good. Blame fixes nothing. So when something happens or somebody violates something, just to blame them doesn't do anything. We should figure out what their motivators are. We should de-incentivize their bad behaviors as an organization. Context drives behavior. I have kind of a funny story about this. My youngest, she's 10, and she was playing with the ball in the backyard. This is a couple weeks ago. And I'm sitting on the couch. I hear her, she's all by herself. She's like pulling some of the yard furniture over. I'm like, what's happening out there? Anyway, I go out there and check on her and I'm like, Evie, what are you doing? She's like, I accidentally threw a ball over the fence. I'm gonna go get it. She's 10, right? She's not gonna hop this fence and go get this ball. So I help her, I get it figured out and I hand it to her. And I said, hey, don't do that again. And she looked at me and she's like, Dad, why would I do that? That was my favorite ball. And it's like, yeah, people don't do things on purpose, right? The context drives behavior. The choices that I make now are the choices that I think are the best situation. And sometimes when things happen, it's like, oh, now I have new context. Now I understand. So if we blame them for that and get rid of them, we just lost the person that knows the most about that situation, right? We don't want to do that. Learning and improving is vital. If we somebody made a comment back here about not reporting things, right? If we don't report things, how are we ever going to learn from them? And so how do we create a psychologically safe work environment that allows people, one, make mistakes, and two, raise their hand and say, there's something to learn here. Psychologically, like that's a lot, especially for construction workers to feel comfortable that they're not going to get run off a job. All right, and then that's where this comes in. How leaders respond matter, right? Somebody brings something with their hat in hand and says, hey, there's an issue that I have, I want to talk to you about it. And then leaders freak out about it. They're not going to do it again. So how leaders respond matters in how we can establish all these things. Now, the reason I'm telling you about the HOP principles is really to set the stage of what this might look like. So here's an example from the auto industry. This is from Volvo. So a little data set here. In 1968, there was a little over 53,000 vehicles. Over 100,000 vehicles on the road. Fast forward to 2018, there's 225 million. So more than double the amount of vehicles. But there's just about half as many fatalities. So why is that? People get smarter. Do we get better drivers? No, no. So what happened is roads changed, right? The system around these drivers that make mistakes changed. Our highway systems changed, and then Volvo, this is an example from Volvo, they actually changed. So from New York Post in 2018, they actually highlighted that the XC60 was the safest car on the road. Does anybody drive a Volvo? No. But they're the safest cars on the road. And here's why. This was back in the day. Adaptive cruise control, auto lane, autonomous braking, pedestrian, right? Does anybody drive a newer vehicle? Yeah. Has your car ever flashed up that thing in front of you?
Yeah.
It potentially saved your life, right? Mine does it all the time, but I'm a really good driver.
It's a harm reduction model.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Harm
There you
reduction.
go. Right, so this is a really good example from the industry. So Volvo president actually promised death-proof cars by 2020, which is a pretty lofty goal, but we're getting there. There are less and less fatalities on the road, not because we have smarter people, better drivers. They're not better trained. In fact, they're probably worse drivers. But we have better situations for those human error-likely drivers. These are the principles that we look at Mortenson. So instead of counting on more regulations or the enforcement of police officers to stop them from doing bad things or computer systems in truck driving, things, they're looking at putting their effort into what they can control, their internal processes, engineering, and their design. We call these direct control. So a direct control is something that is in place that even if there's unintentional human error, no one's going to die, right? Back to the cell phones. We put cases and screen protectors because we know that we're going to drop our phones. That's a direct control. So some examples from the construction industry. It might as well be a picture of my dad. My dad has worked in construction. He's 72 years old, so 50 plus years, right? The dude never wears pants. He's always in shorts while he's doing construction. And, utilizing a tool like a skill saw like this has lots of error likely trapped. You have to do something very specific in order to do this safely. And there could be catastrophic outcomes if you miss one of those steps. So instead of yelling at this guy and telling him, hey, you're doing this wrong, you got to use two hands on this, you got to do that, we should change the environment. We should provide him with a different tool that has less error likely situations out of this. Use a powered miter saw like this and use it one-handed. If it kicks on you, it's not going to come back and cut your leg off, right? Like these are the types of situations that we try to implore at Mortenson Construction. Here's another really good one. Do you guys know that OSHA still allows in their fall protection regulation something called a monitor? Fall protection monitor, which means somebody could be working at heights. You could be 30 stories up in the air, working on the edge of this thing. And as long as Kira's there telling me, hey, don't get too close to that edge, that's a good control. Is that good? No, it's not. Because what if I trip? What if Kira sneezes and scares me and I fall off, right? That has very catastrophic outcomes. So what we do is we install fall protection devices. This is actually a fall restraint system. You'll see that this is these can be static lines, which physically will not let that person get to the edge of that. So is it physically impossible for them to fall? It's not, right? Unless they deactivate that safety device, right? So implementing these types of direct controls are really the things that we're looking at in trying to change the industry. We're part of a lot of different industry groups and helping to change the entire industry. So as we continue to practice our operational excellence and our zero injury program, we'll continue to drive that number down. Now, a lot of people in their companies say that their goal is to have zero injuries. What do you guys think about that? I mean, statistics, right? Is zero ever possible?
If you don't monitor it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right? So our zero injury program is not our goal, but our goal is just like any other journey, to continue to learn and to continue to drive that better and better every single year. We're gonna have some ups and downs, but as long as we're getting better, that's all that matters. You know, the thing that really drives our safety program within Mortenson is this human element. You know, Kira talked about how she's in this mental health focus on helping people show up as themselves and as good workers in the field, and combining these two things can really help us drive those numbers down.
And on that note, I'll just dive a little bit into what mental health even looks like in construction and what we at Mortenson are doing to try to help combat this, and how we can tie in physical safety into like psychological safety as well. So some stats that I found incredibly interesting, directly applicable to the construction industry. 1 in 5 construction workers struggle with mental health issues. 15% suffer from substance abuse disorders. More construction workers die by suicide every day than by all other workplace-related fatalities combined, which is especially interesting considering kind of what these workers are doing, what the equipment that they're dealing with, the tools that they handle, the heavy equipment that they're operating, and more die by suicide every day than by the actual work that they're doing at the job site. And then the suicide rate is nearly 4 times greater than the national average. So these numbers are just mind-boggling, really. So what are we doing? I think the construction workers typically have this kind of rough and gruff exterior, the stereotype. And being out there, so I've been at the Meta or Facebook data center for almost 4 years now. And when I went out there, I was 100% doing health and wellness for Meta and for Mortenson. And within 2 months of me being at that job, 2 individuals on the same day committed suicide. And so I witnessed this firsthand, and just the interactions that I had with people, just being out there in such a short amount of time, how their work impacts their mental health, how they choose to kind of like mitigate and deal with their mental health. It leads to like those substance abuse disorders, for example. And so it really just gave me such a passion to try to help these individuals. And really starting that at the project out at Meta, and I'm trying to broaden it throughout all of Mortenson because we have so many campuses, so many projects across the nation. So some things that we are doing is really trying to incorporate wellness as part of safety. So having an individual like myself at our job sites that can be a go-to resource for these men and women that are working these long hours, talking about the nights that was talked about earlier. The schedules within the construction industry are absolutely terrible. So like our project right now, we operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Some of these workers are lucky if they get 1 day off every week. So when do they have time to recuperate and see their families and sleep even? So what I try to do is bring resources to them at the job site. I bring a lot of guest speakers on site, bring doctors, cardiologists, things like that for individuals to meet with these medical professionals that they likely won't be able to set aside time to do outside of work. A lot of these team members, the craft workers, they don't even get PTO, or it takes a while for their health insurance to kick in, whatever it is. So if I can bring these resources to them, then we're going to be helping their physical health, their psychological safety, which in turn helps them work more safely throughout their workday. We do a lot of union work, and even with those companies that aren't unions, a lot of the team members on site don't know the extra resources they have available to them. If you're familiar with what an employee assistance program is, It's a third-party organization totally separate from health insurance that typically offers a wide variety of free and confidential resources. So what I try to do is dig into the employee assistance programs for the trade partners that we have on site so that I can be kind of just this library of information for these men and women to come to get help. And so depending upon what company we're with, for example, one of our primary trade partners is Cupertino Electric and they're a union. So I contact them, get their employee assistance program information. And these men and women can come to me. I'll sit down with them, go through their EAP. Okay, you're struggling with this. Look at this resource that your EAP has and let's get you set up. Let's call them. Let's navigate their website and get you the help that you need. Other things that I do on site. I originally started out on site as like a wellness coach, if you want to call it that. I bring therapists and counselors on site, like after we had those 2 suicide events, grief counselors came on site so that they can meet with men and women that were impacted by that event, which helps so much because these individuals probably wouldn't have received that help outside of work or even know that that was a thing that they could utilize. Lots of trainings. I'm a mental health first aid trainer, so I have a committee on site that I train to handle mental health situations or educate them on resources that are available so that not just myself, but these other individuals throughout the job can be go-to resources for other men and women within their trade if they don't feel comfortable within other companies on site. Every month I put out a newsletter with various information. For example, March is National Nutrition Month, so I create a newsletter all about different nutrition information posted in all the bathrooms across the site. So just little bits of information that these team members probably wouldn't know about or try to find on their own. Just easy access to them. And then resource rack specifically with a bunch of mental health information. So 988, if you're familiar with that, the National Suicide Hotline, and lots of just information pamphlets, things that they can grab and go and do discreetly because mental health is such a taboo topic, especially within the construction industry. A lot of people don't want to talk about it. They're embarrassed. There's a stigma. And it's such an uphill battle. And like I said before, I've been out there for almost 4 years and I've made it such a point to build rapport with these men and women, create that safe space, that psychological safety in another facet, so that they can feel comfortable talking to me. And that makes such a difference as well. And then lunch and learns and toolbox talks. I've been working on a partnership or collaboration with the Huntsman Mental Health Foundation, so kind of an extension of the University of Utah, to partner with Mortenson and specifically at our Meta project to bring resources to this job site that are local. That foundation, if you're familiar, is building that mental health hospital just down the road, which is incredible. And so educating our workforce on that resource and being able to send people directly there to get help is going to be amazing. And then educating the job and the employees on national resources and support. So something that's been really cool that has started is an entire week devoted to construction suicide prevention, which that would have been unheard of like 10 years ago. There's summits and conferences. So 2 weeks ago, I went to Dallas, Texas and attended a construction working mind summit. So it's a week-long classes, workshops directly related to how can we better mental health within the construction industry. And I left that conference with so many resources, so much information specifically about like substance abuse disorders. So I'm going to make that my priority over this next year of how I can help the men and women on site battle those substance use disorders, how that ties into mental health and then in turn to safety in general at the job. And then training. So like I mentioned before, mental health first aiders will train individual at our job site and how to handle those mental health crises, be a mental health first aider in general, and just do what we can to spread awareness and help those individuals on site. But it's been, like I said before as well, an uphill battle because this is such a taboo topic, but I'm really impressed with the construction industry in general and how receptive men and women are becoming to this. And it's hard to break down those walls, but we just have to keep trying to make a difference little by little.
And it makes sense, right? Like there's a whole, OSHA regulatory compliance factor that like deals with keeping people safe on a job. Why would we not tackle such a topic, right? Especially when their exposure is 4 times higher than any other company. It's absolutely amazing. We also wanted to, kind of just put a little plug in here. We are hiring. If anybody needs a job, I have a whole bunch of cards, the coolest business cards that you'll ever see. There's like 10 mil thick. There's like, it's going to fill your back pocket. Yeah, definitely reach out. We wanted to share what our career path is for new graduates. We actually have quite a few layers within a safety function, but we basically have safety engineers 1, then you go to 2, senior safety engineer 1, then you go to 2, safety manager 1 and 2, senior safety manager, project safety director, and then operating group safety director. And it all flows up into our vice president of health and safety for the company. You're assigned to different operating groups within these functions, and so you kind of have like a dotted line. We currently have nearly 200 full-time safety professionals within the organization. We have hundreds of job sites all over the country with tons of different opportunities. It's a great company to work for. So I actually asked Noah, he's our recruiter. We have 19 safety professional job openings right now, and we have 4 internship opportunities that are open right now. Not only just for safety folks, but we're hiring for field engineers, electrical engineers, estimators, BDC, which is we actually build things in a 4D model, and that we were able to find clash detection and feasibility for constructability and all that stuff. Pretty high tech. But we are actively recruiting and trying to hire a bunch of people. Yes.
I looked over your website for the internship and it says it's for bachelor and associate degree, where most of our students are master's levels. Is that gonna be?
Or PhD.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
So is that an opportunity for them as well, or no, it's more for the undergrad?
No, it is definitely an opportunity. I think that we probably cater a little bit more to like those associates and bachelor's degrees just because these are entry level type positions. But like I said, I graduated from this program and got in, and it's been an amazing journey so far. So yeah.
So I'm Ryan Olson. I'm one of the newer faculty for our new occupational health psychology program.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, our new graduates from that program, we're not likely to go the safety professional route. Are there health and wellness job opportunities within the company?
I think that we're growing that with Kira partnering with our vice president of health and safety. Traditionally we don't have like IH type job openings, but there will be this aperture that opens up in the industry in the coming years to tackle things like that. Just general.
As of now, they would start at the safety engineer route and then tie in wellness, so like starting with like ergonomics, but then really hitting hard with like mental health.
Yeah.
But as of now, it would start the safety engineer.
Yeah, our students will have all the same fundamental courses that all the other Rocky Mountain Center emphases do. They'll just have a little bit extra in mental health and organizational climate, culture, things like that.
Yeah, definitely lends itself, right? Yeah. Are there any other questions? This is a little QR code that our recruiter put together. If you're interested, you can submit like a little interest form on there if you're interested in learning a little bit more. But we wanted to open it up and just see if there's any questions about anything. Yes, sir.
So back in the pre-2008 housing boom, I was an illegal child laborer as a framing carpenter.
I've been there.
Yeah. And even in that, what is kind of like the bottom sludge of the industry in many ways, even in that strata at that time, there were some engineering kind of safety measures, right? Saws had guards, nail guns had safeties, but also every job site you walked around to had that guard wedged open and the safety pin backed on the nail gun. So something I'm really curious about is how you guys, emphasizing these engineering solutions to safety, how do you deal with the occasional or frequent instances where somebody tries to circumvent those things?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it all comes down to what your organization is willing to do for you to set you up for success, right? Like whenever we interview with a new trade partner, I call them trade partners, they're subcontractors. But they're like, man, Mortenson's extra. It's like you could say that, but we just follow the rules to keep people safe. Like we don't pin guards back. There is this small piece still of compliance. I don't know if you've heard of the Bradley curve. It's a study from DuPont about people and their like risk tolerances. And the Bradley curve really associates like you have a higher number of injuries if you rely on your instincts. And then that number drops as soon as you become independent. Like, and it takes a while to make that cultural change of like, I value wearing my gloves and my glasses and not pinning that guard back because I don't want to cut my leg off. Right? And then there's this next step of interdependence. Like, how do we look out for each other on the job site? And when Kira, you know, maybe might be taking a risk that is against the rules or I think is going to hurt her, am I willing to go and talk to her about it? And so our goal is really to get ourselves into that interdependent world where we rely on each other to keep people safe. It's a little bit of like social pressures, right? Like, I'm going to follow the rules because if I don't, I'm the only one that stands out. I want to be like everybody else, sort of thing. So it's a little bit of like that psychology. And we foster that within the company. You're right, the industry is not there. And I think it's because there's a lack of resources. There's competing priorities. You get a small roofing contractor that's just starting out, they don't have funds for fall protection. So they get up there and they just get after it in hopes that nobody dies. And if they do, they have insurance for that. Right? It's not the right thing to do, but there's still a process through it. I think as an industry, we're continuing to grow that. And the more that we get to work with those trade partners, we can kind of elevate the way that they think about that. I mean, I'm in Arizona, so we have concrete roof tiles. Think about silica dust. I mean, those dudes are just getting after it with that chop saw, just breathing it all in. And we all know about silica dust. It doesn't hurt when you breathe it in, so it should be fine. So 20 years later, when you have, you know, all kinds of pneumoconiosis or cancer or whatever, right? Yeah, it's tough. We try to do that through those hot principles of setting people up for success rather than relying on them to make the right decisions.
Because I know a lot of those guys would have seen like any pressures to kind of not pin back their guards and whatever else, as at least in that setting, it would have gone straight to being punitive.
Right.
And the main thing I'm curious about is like, do you guys try to stay away from that in more like norm setting? But I mean, I imagine there's got to be some knuckleheads who just don't get with the program.
100%, right? We try to assume positive intent and we ask them like, hey, is there something that, you know, did you need a different tool? If you're pinning back the guard, why are you pinning it back? And maybe we find a different tool for them and they're happy. But if they just go, I don't care, through the rules, and it's like, well, you don't belong here. And then we get them off. But that's like few and far between. A lot of times it's like, I don't have the right thing. The reason I'm taking this shortcut is because you haven't given me what I need to be successful. And if we can get people to talk about those things, then we can change the environment.
That might be a nice opportunity where productivity and safety are aligned.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and we don't, you know, there's a lot of companies out there that say safety is our number one priority. But what do you do with priorities when you're under the gun with schedule and finances? You rearrange those priorities, don't you? It's not a priority for us. I actually was on a job the other day. We have a policy where we hydrovac when we get within 10 feet of a buried utility, right? And we got these guys out there with this skinny little backhoe bucket digging in between some high voltage buried transmission lines. And I'm like, what are you doing? They're like, I'm almost done. And I was like, no, we're stopping. We don't do this, right? And they're like, we got the small bucket. I said, yeah, but we hydrovac. And they're like, it'll cost us $30,000 to hydrovac. And I don't care, hydrovac, right? Mortenson's large enough that it's like, we can be a little bit over budget. We can be a little bit past our schedule, but we can't be a little bit unsafe. It's a no-go for us.
Thank you. I could ask a million questions, so I'll shut up.
No, that's right. And I could talk
thank you so
forever
much.
Kind of on that note, changing the process too. So we implement, they're called IWPs, integrated work plans. So it's the trade partner or subcontractor outlines their process of the work that they're doing. And the expectation is that every week as a crew and as a subcontractor trade partner, they review that on a weekly basis. Okay, what needs to be changed within this process to make our work more safe and more efficient? So like, oh, I needed to remove this guard several times this last week. I know I can't do that. So what can we change about the process this week to make it more safe and still work efficiently and be productivity, but be safe about it?
It's a lot of, talking through stuff with people instead of, again, just assuming that like, I'll do what's right. Yes, sir.
We're interviewing student candidates for next year, and I have a particular doctoral student candidate who's been studying participation in safety systems like, it looked like your hazard and near miss reporting
Yeah.
system and its effects on day-to-day operations. And so I'm wondering, have you or do you consider partnering with students for dissertations to study your safety processes?
Absolutely. Yes, we would definitely encourage that. I mean, it's all in this vein of continuous improvement. I'll tell you, over the last 30 years of our zero injury program, we've shifted a lot, right? We started a program, we go, that's not it. We go to the next thing, right? So having somebody take a deep dive and look at those analytics and how we're rolling it out, huge benefit.
Had
Great.
BYU reach out to me recently about implementing mental health studies, so if you would like to get in touch with me directly, and if they're local to Utah, to implement at our Meta Facebook data center, I could be your go-to contact for that.
So I'm really excited that you're addressing the mental health and the substance use. So I'm Dr. Melissa Chen. I'm an occupational medicine physician, but I'm also boarded in addiction medicine. I really love that space of keeping your health, your worker healthy, right? And mental health and addressing substance use disorder. Knowing that it's such a significant problem within your working population, and bringing EAP is great, but the constant affirmation of destigmatizing and bringing it out there. And so is your EAP also substance use specific? Because all EAPs, have different focuses, right? Whether it's general anxiety, depression, alcohol use disorder, cannabis use disorder, but then also what is coming to work impaired and, still intoxicated or recovering, right, from a crazy weekend. How are you addressing that?
Yeah, so all of our trade partners or the subcontractors have different EAPs. It's just dependent upon like their company, the union, etc. Most of them are generalized, so they just have so many different resources within this one EAP, like Blomquist Hill, for example, if you're familiar with that.
Yes.
So there's probably substance use or are likely substance use like programs and things, resources within those EAPs, but it's not one EAP specific to substance use. It's a general EAP.
Yeah. Well, if you guys want to talk about how to really create a more recovery-friendly workplace of acknowledging it and then getting people the help, but then how do they stay in active recovery while working? Happy to chat with you. There's been a couple of national movements on this that's really trying to get some traction.
Yeah, we can love that.
Yeah, this year we're working on developing a support program. That one of the unions over in the St. Louis started this, like you're familiar with that one.
Yep.
So we're working on implementing that at this project here in Utah as well.
Yeah. Do you have a partner or are you working from scratch?
Working from scratch currently.
Oh, well, we should chat because you don't need to work from scratch.
Let's do it.
There's people out there that you can just piggyback on and adopt.
Awesome.
So I want to say, as occupational injury prevention, right? All of this is amazing, fascinating. I think a lot of other organizations can learn from what you are doing. My question, I guess I have two questions and then a comment after that. But my first question is, there's this interplay between physical injuries and mental health. Oftentimes those are looked at as independent sort of conditions, factors, whatever you want to say. How are you all looking into that interplay, that overlap? Second question is, where are you going? Where do you want to be going over the next fill in the blank and time duration, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. And then my comment is, as you probably just heard, we have a lot of expertise and interest, and I would love to explore, and I know that Joe's mentioned this too, forming a more robust relationship where we can help you and then also use it as opportunities for additional training of students and maybe jobs too. So 2 questions and comment. Sorry.
So your first question is like, absolutely, like when you think about, contributing factors versus causal factors, like I don't believe in the root cause, right? There are so many factors that are out there that just compile, right? The whole Swiss cheese model, like everything just happened to line up. And mental health is definitely one of those things, whether it's lack of sleep or trouble at home or going through divorce or troubled kids, right? Like you name it, it definitely can have an effect on the job site physical safety. And that's really why we've made such an investment there. And we're really in the infancy of where this is going. So to be honest, like who knows where it's gonna go? But we know that we have to pull on that string and just see what happens.
I think they've been so independent from one another for so long, and we're just now starting to mesh them. It's like, for example, one of our trade partners, they are like the drywallers, and they just had a slew of injuries, hand incidents, and they have been working like 5/10s and weekends for who knows how long. And so the leadership all sat down, what can we do to address this? And so now they're on a 5/8 schedule. So now they get their weekends off, they're working normal 8-hour days, they get adequate time to rest, enjoy their hobbies and interests and their family and friends. Guess what? We haven't had an incident from them in months now. And so things like that are slowly starting to.
I would be curious, I love the journal club. If there are journals that are published that have a direct correlation between mental health and physical safety on a construction site. I'm sure that there is, or if there's not, somebody's got to be studying it soon, right?
Exactly, exactly. I mean, I know that's in other industries, but I can't think of anything right off the top of my head in construction
Yeah.
specifically.
But maybe
other
more
industries for sure.
manufacturing.
Yeah,
Yes,
manufacturing for sure.
Definitely manufacturing. I think there may even be some in truck driving,
Transportation too, yeah.
transportation and so forth. So, but in construction, our literature review was narrowed to certain things, but I've not heard of anything. So it'd be one of the things where we would need to dig around and find out, right? What's out there. And in particular, if there isn't anything out there, that's a huge gap that needs to be filled.
Absolutely. You got capstone projects coming up, right? Sure. You got some students that need to fulfill.
Yeah.
Well, I'm one of the course directors for the capstone class, so we should definitely talk
Yes.
about getting a project.
It would be great if you had students that would just want to come tour, a job site and come see some stuff. Like it's an amazing.
Could you host us sometime in the next month?
Yeah, I can set that up.
Woo!
Okay, Don,
Can
let's
faculty
do
come
it.
too?
Yes.
Have some availability.
Anything else? Yes, back there.
To the recruiting email again real quick.
Oops.
College, what was it?
College recruiting at mortenson.com.
Thank you.
I lied, I'm gonna ask another question. So like, how do you go about vetting subcontractors from a kind of safety perspective? And like, how does that integrate with like the business interests?
Yeah, so we actually have target thresholds that they have to submit through a pre-qualification process.
In terms of like injury rates?
Injury rates, financial viability, if they've worked on projects, if they have a history, like let's say it's a $2 million scope and they've done like $10,000 projects, we'll hard pass.
Yeah.
So yeah, they get flagged in the system, and I actually look at every single one of them. Comes across my desk for Phoenix, Salt Lake, and Denver, so it's a lot of time in front of my computer. But I look at OSHA logs, the past 3 year of OSHA logs, which doesn't typically tell like the why behind things, and so I set up 20-minute interviews, and I don't talk to their safety director. I talk to their CEO and their president and whatever. And we talk about their trends. And really what I want to know is what have they done? What changes have they made in their business to help support the workers that work for them? I don't want to hear like, oh, we implemented a glove program. It's like, okay, whatever. Like what are you doing to set your people up for success, right? And to be honest, if there are people that don't give us the right answers, and I'll tell you what a wrong answer looks like. I had a CEO say, well, that guy was just a dumbass. I'm like, okay, hard pass, no thanks. And we literally don't partner with them. We're like, we'll go to the next person, even if they're $100,000 more expensive. Like, doesn't matter. We need to have the right partners to make sure that nobody gets hurt.
So, I'm sorry.
I love it, Kevin.
This
Keep
is
them
like,
coming, man.
yeah. So, I mean, construction is famously like feast or famine, right? And so like, I imagine that in terms of just having options for subcontractors, that has to track a bit with the business cycle. So like, does that kind of change the calculus a bit sometimes?
That's why we are very well diversified. Trying to go back. to
All the-
All this, right? Because you're right, it's feast or famine, it goes up and down. When our geographic building goes down, our renewable energies goes up. And our teammates are well versed and they can go from one industry to the next. We've gone through this substantial growth where, I want to say 5 years ago, we were a $4 billion a year company. So in 5 years, we almost doubled, right? In the amount of revenue that we're doing. And we're not the budget contractor. People pay a premium to have Mortenson build their stuff, but they do it because we are high quality and we keep people safe. And we can solve immense problems. We get customers that say, can you build this? Everybody else says that it can't be built. We got you. Figure it out. So yeah, it's the battleship of a balance sheet. We can figure it out.
And I guess that's something you can do because you're general and not a specialty contractor.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And that's where, partnering with these like trade partners, kind of the smaller shops, like it's hard for them because they don't have all those resources. They don't have, the different markets to go serve in. So we partner with them to try to help them be successful. Anything else?
Anything from our online participants?
Some comments, but no questions.
Okay.
Good comments, bad comments? They were
Good comments, well
Okay.
received.
Tell that one.
Nothing like that.
We really appreciate, coming to talk. We would love to continue to do more with the program, come in and do something or facilitate
Anytime you want a
walks.
site tour, want to come and speak to anyone on site, anything.
Thank you for coming because it's great hearing about what you're doing, the advancement of your own career, Mitch. And just highlighting so many major employment principles. Simply outstanding.
Thank you very much.